Hello, everybody. So, I figured I should probably do a stream on this. I actually have probably what's going to be an unusual take on this. Probably not a take people are expecting from me. So, we'll get into that in a second. Let me just make sure I'm sharing this on the various platforms. And we'll get right into it. I was going back and forth between doing a live stream and just doing a video, but I'm lazy, so we're just going to do a live stream. I say this every time, but we'll try to keep this relatively short as far as these go. But that's not saying much. So, to give a little background, just while I'm posting this to various social media sites, a day or two ago, I covered the Zelensky victory formula. This last West says. Zelensky revealed his victory plan. Basically, the victory plan is that Ukraine is going to enter NATO more or less immediately. Or it's not even that Ukraine's going to enter NATO. It's that Ukraine's going to get a guaranteed accelerated offer of NATO membership. So Ukraine's not actually going to join NATO faster. They're going to get a faster promise of NATO membership and a whole bunch of stuff. I think the thing to keep in mind with the entirety of the Zelensky victory plan and this whole like thing we're going to talk about is there's a lot of equivocating, there's a lot of giving the impression of one thing but meaning another. There's a lot of like implying implications and stuff like that. I'm just going to be honest. The point of the victory plan was he basically wanted NATO to establish a no-fly zone, Ukraine to get immediate entry into NATO, NATO to send a army to Ukraine, and eventually to use all of this along with additional sanctions as a way of forcing Russia to give up all existing territory and withdraw from Ukraine. It should be repeated that there is when they say negotiations, negotiations means Russia's unconditional surrender. It's the kind of negotiations that the Entente had with the Central Powers at the end of World War One. It's not like the negotiations that the Romans and Parthians might have had when after a long slugfest where neither is really able to defeat each other and they have to come to some sort of agreement. This is surrender negotiations. So that was involved just a massive amount of financial, military aid from the West, entry into NATO, a no-fly zone. Basically, the Zelensky victory plan was just a massive wish list. And he was just came out and was honest and just said, look, unless we get all this stuff, the war's over and we're going to lose. And that's just that. So, now Zelensky has been going around from place to place in the West. He went to America where he apparently presented his plan to Biden and his administration. I think he's talked to Macron, the pirate Schultz, to a whole bunch of European leaders, and basically all of them have dismissed him. He got completely humiliated by Schultz. He got mocked by Schultz, which is a rough place to be when he was in Germany, because he asked for a whole bunch of additional stuff, and Schultz just ignored him, and they just gave a statement saying we support Ukraine, and they didn't say yes or no to any of the things that he asked for, and just basically left him in the lurch. Same thing with Macron. Biden was going to have this big Ramstein 4.0 where he was going to show up and support Zelensky and reaffirm his commitment to as long as it takes. And then that was canceled because he was too busy. Then Blinken was going to but he was too busy too. Blinken apparently was needed to deal with the hurricane in North Carolina. What Blinken has to do with I don't know, relief, hurricane relief? I don't know. Nobody knows. So he was too busy to go to Europe, but now Biden's going to go to Europe anyways and meet with I think it's Schultz and Macron and maybe Tusk. but he's going to meet with a bunch of European leaders, and he's going to not meet with Zelensky. He's not going to hold the conference. Zelensky's just on the out. So Zelensky just got completely and totally humiliated. He announced his big victory plan. And I'm actually going to, like I said, have a take on this that I think a lot of people will find surprising for me. But basically, the entire Western media just ignored his victory plan. They didn't even dismiss it. They want to protect Zelensky and they want to protect their investment in him. So they're just not covering it. So his plan doesn't make a lot of sense. So the idea is just we're not going to cover it at all, and that is the plan. So Zelensky was not happy about this. He has another plan though. He has a plan if this plan fails. Now he has already gone back on it, but I think it's very clear what the point of why he said the original statement was. And I think the going back on it is fake and it's an attempt to get cover. So what is it that Zelensky said? We're going to look at far-right, pro-Russia source, the Kiev Post. So this is what Zelensky said yesterday. President Vladimir Zelensky said on October 17th that he told Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump in their meeting in September that Ukraine needs to be part of NATO or it would pursue nuclear capabilities to protect itself. So we're talking about nuclear rearmament or nuclear armament in the case of Ukraine. Now, a lot of people in the title of this will suggest that isn't this kind of a threat of sorts? Because he put out his big victory plan asking for everything. The West ignored him, and now we're bringing nuclear weapons into this. Now he's like, we're gonna get nuclear weapons. We're gonna use them against Russia. We're gonna do this big escalation. I feel that this is blackmail, and people can disagree, but I think this is you're gonna take me seriously. You're either going to give me all the stuff I wanted, and bail me out, or I'm going to do this and you're going to go down with me and you're going to look like idiots for backing me when I'm doing stuff like that. So let's go through this. So he said, either Ukraine will have nuclear weapons, which will serve as protection, or it must be part of some kind of alliance. Apart from NATO, we do not know of such an effective alliance, Zelensky said he had told Trump. I believe Trump heard me and said it was a fair agreement. Now, Trump hasn't responded yet. I think there's approximately a 0% chance he told Trump this, or that even if he did, that Trump agreed with him. If we remember the aftermath of that meeting, Zelensky looked mad and defeated because Trump mocked him. And Trump is like, look, Zelensky's my buddy. Zelensky's great. He's a great leader of Ukraine. I like Putin too. Putin's another great guy. We're going to sit down. I'm going to resolve this in 24 hours. I know the art of the deal. And it didn't sound like he was on board with this. So Zelensky's probably just making this up. So Zelensky refers to the Budapest Memorandum, which was a deal signed in 1994 in which Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees from Russia, the US, and UK. The agreement resulted in Ukraine losing its nuclear shield. Zelensky argued, while other powers that have maintained their nuclear arsenals have not suffered from a full-scale war. Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. So, were the nuclear weapons ever actually Ukraine's? Because I think this is a debatable concept. So when the Soviet Union collapsed basically overnight, there wasn't time to pull the nuclear weapons out of Ukraine, and a whole bunch of them were stationed there. Now, Russia is the legal successor to the Soviet Union. So did Ukraine inherit the nuclear weapons? Or were the nuclear weapons, did the nuclear weapons that were owned by Russia happen to be on the territory of Ukraine? Because I think that is an open question. That would be like if Scotland seceded, would the nuclear weapons stationed there be Scotland's? Or would they be the UK's nuclear weapons that are stationed in Scotland? So that is one example of it. I'm trying to think. What are some other secessionist movements and countries that have nuclear weapons? Let's say that France has nuclear weapons on what's one of its remaining colonies, New Caledonia. Let's say France has nuclear weapons on New Caledonia, and New Caledonia votes to leave France and become an independent country. Does New Caledonia inherit the weapons? Or do the weapons belong to France and they happen to be in New Caledonia? Now, as Endoro points out, Ukraine couldn't even use the nukes because Russia had the codes for them. So I get what they're saying. I'm just saying it's the narrative that Ukraine had like 2,000 nuclear weapons it could use at any given time. And they gave them up in this great gesture, and they could have kept them and used them is not true. I don't know how hard it is to take apart nuclear weapons. I don't know if they could have used the material from them to build other ones, but I think it is that I think that is the counterpoint. So I hear this come around a lot, and I think that is a fair counterpoint. Also, we have the security guarantees from Russia, the US, and the UK. I'd have to look at what that was. If it was Ukraine being neutral, then that was not going to last. So there was nuclear shield. At the same time, Ukraine said that emphasized they would. Sorry, Zelensky emphasized he would choose NATO membership over pursuing nuclear weapons. Okay. So let's see here. What else do we have? We have Ukraine will seek nuclear weapons if it did not join NATO. Inherit the world's third largest nuclear arsenal. He said it had been a mistake for Ukraine to give up its nuclear arsenal, which it couldn't use. Who gave up their nuclear weapons? All of them, only Ukraine. That's not true. South Africa gave up their nuclear weapons as well. I think Kazakhstan did as well. So did Belarus, and that stuff. So Zelensky, okay, so the thing with nuclear weapons is I think it's possible for most countries to eventually build one, especially if they have experience with nuclear power. As Alex Mercouris made the point today, the technology to make nuclear weapons was developed in the 1930s and was perfected during the 1940s. If we're getting into H bombs or more modern nuclear weapons, yeah, that's more complicated, but getting a nuclear weapon is complicated, but not as complicated as you might think. Now, Ukraine does also have nuclear power plants, a lot of experience with that. They have engineers with relevant skills and they have heavy industry. So it's not impossible that they could build one. Now, the question is, of course, how long would it take? It would probably take a minimum of a couple of years at the very least. Let's be honest. Even if they have a lot of the technology to do it, it's still going to take a while to get the enriched plutonium and start to put the bombs together. They're probably going to have to do a test to make sure their design works. And this is assuming that Russia doesn't stop them, that either the Russians blow up whatever facility is building them, or some sort of covert ops thing happens. Like, there are countries that could get nuclear weapons fairly quick. I think it would still probably take a year. It's called nuclear threshold. So, like, Canada, if we really wanted to get nuclear weapons, we could probably get them fairly quickly. Um, you can get them fairly quickly because we have nuclear power plants, we have the technology, stuff like that. Iran is not far away from a nuclear weapon, but it would still probably take them a year or so to build one. You can't just do this like on a dime. So I do think it's possible. As Aiden points up, um, points out, there is also the issue of how to deliver the warhead. You need to have a missile that's capable of carrying it, which can be pretty big, or you can drop it out of a plane, which I don't think is going to be plausible given Russia air defense. Even if it's possible to get it through, I don't know if they'd use it. Also, would they really have enough nuclear weapons to make a difference? Like, let's say Ukraine was able to get like 6 nuclear weapons together. They could kill a lot of Russian soldiers, but the Russians would, after the first one, or probably before, once they realized that Ukraine had nuclear weapons, they would disperse their forces. They would take steps to prevent Ukraine from destroying entire divisions by itself. Now, they could use it on a civilian area, but if Ukraine nukes Kaliningrad or Moscow or Volgograd, Russia's going to use nukes. Russia's going to take the gloves off, and they're going to just use nukes. And there's going to be no mercy at that point in time. There's going to be no attempt to minimize civilian casualties. So even if they get atomics, it's not going to be enough. Even if we assume Russia had none and Ukraine had a dozen, I don't think it's going to change the battle. It's going to push up Russia's cost of victory a lot. There's also the international damage. If Ukraine was to use atomics, it would, as bad as their international situation is, it would be even worse. So let's see here. What is this? We have the material. This is what Zelensky said. We have the material. We have the knowledge. If the order is given, we would only need a few weeks to have the first bomb, he said. The West should think less about Russia's red lines and more about our red lines. That is impossible. The Baltic states are behind this. The Baltic states support this. To be honest, they're on board with this. They were the only ones who were on board with the Zelensky victory plan, and they're the only ones who I think are on board with the whole nuclear thing. So, okay, unless Ukraine has been developing nuclear weapons for like a decade, there's no way they can get a fission bomb together. I'm not an expert on these things. That just seems completely improbable. That Zelensky, I don't think Japan could do that. Like, someone in the chat who knows more than me, if Japan decided they wanted a nuclear weapon, could they put it together in a month? I don't think so. And they're probably the most capable non-nuclear state of building one. So their technology, their experience with nuclear power, stuff like that. I don't think, like, it's a fantasy. Sources in Ukraine agreed that although there was an element of posturing and brinkmanship in Ukrainian statements, they should be taken seriously. So I think this whole thing is a threat. It's not so much a threat against Russia because, like I said, whatever the Ukrainians could put together is probably going to be a fission bomb. I don't think it's going to be like a big hydrogen bomb. They're going to have to figure out some way of delivering it. I don't know. I just don't think they could do it in weeks. I think it would take longer than that for Japan. I think they're very capable of it, but it takes a while to get the uranium together, to get the delivery system, that kind of thing. So I could be wrong though, but Ukraine is not Japan. So also Zelensky claimed that there's 10,000 North Koreans in Ukraine, which there's no evidence. I have not seen any evidence for, but I don't really want to get into that at the moment. So Zelensky walked this back. I will be fair. I will be fair on this. And so I'll just cover this and then we'll get into my take, which I think a lot of people will probably be surprised by. The MFA. Okay, so Ukraine recent report from the German tabloid that claimed Kiev was closing in on plans to build a nuclear bomb. Okay, office emphasized in his report that Ukraine remains a committed party to the 1994 Budapest Memorandum. He added Ukraine, which has made the greatest contribution in history to international peace, security, and not nuclear non-proliferation. That is a massive lie. That is a massive fucking lie. Is now facing nuclear blackmail from the terrorist state of Russia. Okay, so Moscow not only resorts to impossible and dangerous rhetoric, creates unacceptable threats. Uh, Ukrainian presidential communication advisor dismissed Bill Seitel's report in a statement to Interfax Ukraine, telling the internet, "This is not the first time that Bill has spread something that has no connection to reality, but plays into the hands of Russian propaganda." He said, "We do not do nuclear weapons." So I'm going to say massive, massive X to doubt. This was, I think, pretty obviously leaked by Zelensky to build, because he wanted to get it out there, but also have implausible deniability over it. So, what is my take on this? What is my take on on a certain level, I kind of sympathize with Zelensky. Now, is this crazy? Possibly, but I really don't know what card he has. Okay, but so he gave the big victory speech. He has said repeatedly there can be no negotiations with Russia. That is 100% clear. If he is unwilling to negotiate with Russia at all, this might be the only move he has left. As crazy as it is, as like dangerous as it is, I honestly like, what other move does he have other than trying to force NATO's hand? He tried to ask nicely, he tried to coerce them, and now he's going to blackmail them into doing it by saying, "Okay, well, if you're not going to escalate with Russia, I'm going to escalate for you." So I do kind of get it, and there is a certain logic to this, especially post his victory plan. Now he could resign, he could go into exile, let another government take over and negotiate. But I don't know if he thinks that the Banderites are going to kill him, if he's on drugs, if he's just so invested emotionally in this, what it is. But assuming that there is no possible way for him to negotiate with the Russians, this honestly might be one of the better cards he has left to play. Um, at this point in time, it's a bit like, once again, with Operation Ishigo, and I like to come back at this because it's, I think, it's just something that's never talked about, but I think it's a cool example. So Operation Ishigo was a offensive that Japan launched towards the end of World War II, in which the entire Kwangtung army just surged forward. The goal was to clear out central China and open a route from north to southern China. The real goal, though, was pretty obviously to try to knock nationalist China out of the war. They killed an immense number of nationalist soldiers. They just devastated the countryside. Did it work? It very briefly opened it up, a north-south corridor, but it quickly obviously didn't work out because they created the mother of all salients. But the point is, Japan was doomed, and this was like what they could come up with. This was like a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It wasn't a plausible plan, but it was at least a plan, because you have to at least act like you're going to win the war. And I think to a certain extent that's what Kursk was. It had a 0% chance of success, but they have to at least act like they're doing something rather than just kind of wait for inevitable defeat. I'm not defending their action. I'm not saying they shouldn't surrender. I'm just saying I'm playing devil's advocate because I think it's very easy to just say Zelensky's insane, he's crazy, and there that might be the case, but I think it makes a certain sense to it. Now, I think the bigger issue, and this one I'm actually going to be somewhat favorable to Zelensky. So I think regardless of what you think about Zelensky, I do think the West screwed him. I don't think there's any real doubt about that. I think regardless of how you feel about the conflict, the West lied to him. Now, you could argue that Zelensky was stupid for believing America and Germany and Britain and France, and that he should have known that these people were liars and they would never deliver on their promises. That doesn't like make it better though. It's like if you scam someone, if you scam an idiot, yeah, the idiot should have known better, but that doesn't make you a good person because you scammed them. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, the fact that Zelensky was dumb and was probably lured in by his own vaingloriousness and his desire to be a Churchillian figure. That's certainly true, but it doesn't change the fact that all of these guys said as long as it takes, they said Putin was the new Hitler. They said this was a civilizational, existential battle that if we don't win, it'll mean the end of Europe. How many times did these people say that Russia was going to invade France, that Russia was going to invade Britain, that Russia was going to use nuclear weapons, that if they didn't stop Russia there, it would lead to World War III? How many times did they say that we're absolutely committed to Ukraine as long as it takes, that we pledge our lives and our sacred honor, that it's a spiritual struggle, that they said all this stuff. And I guess, like, once again, you can be cynical and go, well, that was all a lie, but, like, I don't get, it doesn't make it better. Like, I've said this a lot of the times, all you have in this world ultimately is your word, is your reputation, is your ability to at least try to deliver on your promises. And the degree to which these people lied, and it's not just that they lied, it's not just that they said that oh, we'll do what we can, we'll try to help you, and then tried to weasel out of it. They gave the strongest guarantees. They whipped the Western world up into a fervor. They wished up into a fervor. America destroyed its relationship with dozens of countries over this. It caused a global crisis, multiple global crises. The oil embargo against Russia destroyed America's relations with most of Africa. It ruined the relationship. It hurt the relationship with China. It led to de-dollarization. The U.S. went all in on this, and now it's the 11th hour. The chips are down. Zelensky's screwed, and they're just gonna quietly abandon him. They're not even gonna have the dignity to say, "Look, Zelensky, we've done everything we can. We couldn't. We have gone as long as we could. We aren't going to be able to see you to the end of this. We're sorry." And they aren't going to say that. We're going to get some bullshit. The new narrative, we have the new stab in the back narrative. The new stab in the back narrative is going to be this. It's going to be Russia didn't win the war. They got shells from North Korea, weaponry from China and Iran, and it actually wasn't Ukraine fighting Russia. It was Ukraine fighting all of BRICS collectively at the same time with no outside support. And Ukraine lost not because Russia was strong, but because like half of the world went up against them. Or a majority of the world went up against them and they lost. And Russia lost millions and millions of soldiers. So Do I feel sorry for Zelensky? As Konstantin said, no. To a lot of extent, it isn't. But even if Zelensky is a weasel, even if he's a sleazy, corrupt asshole, which I think we can all agree on, even if I personally dislike him because of the way he's sacrificed brave, loyal Ukrainian soldiers and on like holdable positions and just left them to starve and die. Um, it doesn't change the fact that these people lied to him. It doesn't change the fact that these people lied to the Ukrainian people, that they lied to their own people, that they destroyed their own economies. Germany Germany's in a recession. Companies are leaving and all that stuff, and they're just going to back out at the last minute, pretend that this shit never happened. And yes, it's politics. Yes, these people are bad people. We know that. I should expect that. But once again, that's like an excuse for doing evil. I think we have to pull back a little bit from the cynicism and try and get a little bit of humanity out of this. Having a sip of water. But no, I think there has to, like it's not acceptable. And I think Zelensky, if I want to give him a charitable interpretation, he's like, well, "Come on, guys, help me!" And they're like, "You know what? Okay, there's a video clip I want to show from StarCraft, which I think summarizes this very well." So we're just gonna go and.
Desert, Gerard. We've all seen the tapes 100.
You've seen nothing. Dissecting a
This is how I think the conversation in NATO went.
dead Zerg in a lab is one thing. Unleashing them on men is another. You must go into this with both eyes open. Once started, there's no going back. Are you prepared to go all the way with this, Alexei?
Yes. Yes, I am prepared to go all the way. My good Admiral.
Good. Good. I knew I could count on you.
Admiral, the colonist base will be overrun in a matter of minutes. Shall we intervene?
Take us into orbit, Mr. Malmsteen. We've seen enough.
Okay, it was kind of a shitty quality, but you get the idea. Um, you get the idea. I do love "Take Us Out." We've seen enough. Let me just. I think this is
Take us into orbit, Mr. Malmsteen.
We've seen enough. Yeah. So they just pull out and leave the colonists to die. That's kind of how I feel NATO is at the moment. And Ukraine's obviously that soldier. So, I don't know. European relations after with Russia. So, that's just, I didn't really have a ton else to say after that. Zelensky is trying to start World War III. He's trying to bring in all this other stuff. I'm just saying, from a certain point of view, they are snakes. Biden is a snake, Macron's a snake, Schultz is a snake, Justo's a snake. All of these people are scumbags. Now, the other argument is that these people are fucking stupid and they didn't realize that this would never work. And that is plausible. It could be that they just live in a bubble, and they honestly just don't, like, this doesn't even occur to them. That this stuff is just like a complete non sequitur to them. I think that is possible as well. But it doesn't change the fact that they're quietly throwing Zelensky under the bus and leaving him. That's another question. If Zelensky's worried that he's not going to get his, like, 20 homes, like his mansion in Florida, his billions of dollars, and ultimately it's the Ukrainian people who suffered from all of this. And you can say that this is Putin's fault, and it certainly is Putin's fault in a lot of ways. But there's a difference between getting shot at by your enemy, who you know is your enemy, who you're in a conflict with, and being stabbed in the back for people who think that they were your friends. I think those are two very different things. Because at least in one case, it's clear what's going on. So that's my thoughts on the matter. Maybe I'm being overly generous to Zelensky, but I admit I try sometimes just to come up with interesting takes, rather than just kind of the obvious one. Just because I think I'd rather, like, intellectually challenge myself a bit, think a bit outside of the box. I just find it more interesting than just kind of doing whatever the standard one is. So, hope people enjoyed the short stream. God bless everybody, and we'll